Hey class, this is Seth from Georgia Southern State Uni or Georgia Southern University, and today we're gonna go over transform plate boundaries. A transform plate boundary is where the plates slide past each other instead of either away from each other or to each other, which those are known as convergent boundaries and divergent boundaries, which are much more plentiful than the transform boundary. Some things about transform boundary I found interesting were that the lithosphere is not either produced from the transform boundary, while it's also not destroyed from that. And then earthquakes are very common at this type of fault from what I've seen, as compared to either divergent or convergent boundaries. A lot of our earthquakes happen in North America over in California. And then a lot more happen also in New Zealand on the two faults known as the San Andreas fault and the Alpine fault. These are the two examples I just mentioned, with San Andreas, the San Andreas fault being in California, and New Zealand, which is Alpine fault, which is also a lesser known example. Some facts that I noticed about where the structures are built on this, they're usually torn apart from earthquakes, and then after that they go in opposite directions after the tear. If there's is in the ground above ground, it creates a linear fault valley, which is more like kind of like the Grand Canyon, or underwater it creates a true canyon. Crust is not broken, or crust is broken, but it's not created or destroyed. The crust and the lithosphere are the same, but something I found out through another site was that the crust also doesn't have water in it. One of the most common things that people don't realize about these faults is that they're transform faults, and people think that a slip strike fault are the same thing. A slip strike fault has like mainly one plate that it affects, while the transform boundary goes off of two plates. This is an example of a strike slip versus a transform boundary. The strike slip, as you can see, has a solid line, which is supposed to be representing just the one plate that it's going, while the transform fault here has two separate lines, which is supposed to represent two plates. Then here we have how long the fault is for San Andreas, and it goes between the Pacific plate and the North American plate, and it extends from about Eugene, Oregon, all the way down into a good little chunk of Mexico. And the Alpine fault goes between the Pacific and the Indo-Australian plates, which takes up most of New Zealand. I believe the number was 480 kilometers. Let's see. And then, as we said, this is the Indo-Australian plate, but in the picture it only shows Australian plate. And then the Alpine fault is what's here in the red. And then here's some of this where I got some of the sources, or my sources where I got my information from, and where I got the pictures from.